Welcome back to another week and another day of Political Breakfast right here on WABE. We are so glad that you are here and joining us, making us one of the top podcasts that is listened to here, produced from WABE. So we certainly do appreciate that and always want to take time just to say thank you. With me today are strategists Brian Robinson and Tharon Johnson.
Good to be with you.
Good to be here.
It's good to be here and not in L.A., right? Because have you been watching?
I have been watching, and it's really it's sad, but it's also something that we knew was going to happen. You have an administration right now who is laser-like focused on cracking down on what they call illegal immigrants, which I like to call undocumented, unlawful immigrants who are in this country. A place like California, where you have people there who depend on this workforce, many employers have been able to manipulate the system for a very long time of hiring people who are here undocumented, unlawful. But what you also see is that this community, particularly in California, is a place where a lot of folks have gone there who are not from this country, who are productive citizens. And it's not so much that the administration want to get illegal people out of the country, particularly criminals. And again, I'll go on the record for saying this, is that if you're here and you're committing criminal activities and you're here illegally, then you need to be sent back. But if you're here, in particularly DACA, folks who were born here, even folks who have been here for a while and now just trying to really figure out, what this new sort of recommitment by this administration, how it affects them. But where I think it's gotten too far, and which is why you see the resistance in California, is that there are people who are being detained who are legal. I read somewhere this weekend that the administration is now requiring that the ICE raids continue even more because they're trying to detain 3,000 people a day. And so when you have that sort of commitment and that direction and that directive coming from the administration, it's just been met with some what was starting to be peaceful protests, but now it's turned violent. You see that officers are being attacked, and now the ICE folks need help, and that's why the president is now calling in the National Guard. The other thing that's unprecedented about this...
How are they getting away with arresting, people who are here legally? That's a big question.
Because
how are they getting away with that?
Well, my friends are telling me, I talked to some folks who work for Karen Bass, and that's the mayor of Los Angeles. I talked to some folks who work for members of Congress that are there. Lisa, Georgia, and I said this before, right, when it came to shooting deaths and assassinations in these schools, right, we're always one shot away. We're one gun being in the wrong hands away from being like California. But guess what? We in Georgia are one peaceful protest away that turns violent from being like California. But this is what they're doing. The ICE raids, they're literally going to people's graduations. They're going to elementary school graduations. They're going to people's churches. They're going to people's jobs. And we even saw right here in Georgia, which I hope we may not be spending a lot of time on it. They're going to nail salons in Georgia. So you can only imagine what's happening in California. Secondly, there is no really due process. Now, there's supposed to be due process for citizens, and there's a process for due process for non-citizens in this country. The due process for non-citizens in this country is fluid. It's fast, and there's no really double checking, crossing your T's and dotting your I's process. And so that's what led to it. And then the last thing that's unprecedented about this is that this will be, I think, the first time, if not maybe only second time in this country's history where you now see a president sending National Guard to a state and a city when the local government there, the governor nor the mayor, has requested it. And that's what's so unprecedented about this.
Yeah, Brian, what are your thoughts on this?
This is going to continue to be a big national debate for some time. And, there's the California issue, which my view on it is, yes, it is unprecedented. Tharon is right about that. But what is not unprecedented is the difference between Republicans and Democrats when it comes to the approach to civil disobedience, civil unrest, and in some cases rioting. I think a lot of Republicans see what's happening out there, and they think about 2020 when you saw very liberal governments allow Minnesota cities like Minneapolis get turned into war zones. We saw it happen in Portland and in Seattle. And I think there is a bit of trepidation about letting that happen again. And so the politics of this may actually benefit Republicans to some degree if Democrats are like, hey, don't have the National Guard, don't restore civil order in the streets of Los Angeles. Locally, one thing that Tharon brought up there was that the nail salon, and we're going to see some of these stories, and look, that's going to be where the rubber hits the road on the politics, because Republicans do want to see a stop to illegal immigration. Independents do, and I would say a lot of Democrats do. Tharon just said some stuff there that actually is pretty middle of the road. Like, if you're here illegally, you commit a crime, you got to go. I think there's a lot of consensus around that. Where it starts getting trickier is when you have people who came here illegally, are residing here illegally, but are otherwise tax-paying citizens, maybe church-going citizens. That's where the politics get a lot more murky, and there will be some backlash to it. The Dalton case certainly is a great example of that. I saw Representative Casey Carpenter this weekend and had a cocktail with him one night, and we had just talked about him on our show during the live event last week. And I said, buddy, whatever anybody says about you, I got to say this. You have a giant pair. You are definitely a courageous guy willing to stand up for what you believe, whether it's exactly what I believe or other Republicans believe. He stands up for what he believes is right and is willing to pay the political consequence for it. So I give him credit for that courage. But one thing I said to him is, what I'm nervous about is this. My view is, let's be selfish as Americans to some degree. And by that I mean, yes, we need to stop illegal immigration. We do need to have people who are here illegally sent back home. But let's not go out and pluck out people who are filling important workforce roles where those industries may collapse without that workforce. Let's be selective in how we do this. And let's not give kids college educations that we pay for or subsidize as taxpayers and then send them to some other country to benefit that country. We need, if we're going to invest in these kids' educations, we need to get the benefit of their skills, their intelligence, and the workforce. That's a long-term thing, and here's what I hope. I'll end with this. I hope that these tough decisions, because we're now at a place where it's not politically easy. Getting rid of criminals is easy. This is harder. This may actually make Congress get involved and lead and change laws that need to be changing to deal with today's reality. They have refused to do anything on immigration for a generation, and it has been a disaster. The Biden administration led to a disaster that is leading to this backlash and these repercussions. Congress has got to step in and tell us what the law is going to be, and the chief executive can enforce that.
Well, how real is this? Federal agents raided a nail salon in Marietta over the weekend, arresting 12 undocumented workers there. And, you know, a lot of people are in fear that they'll come knocking on their door, knocking down their door next. So what were your thoughts on that when you read about that, Tharon?
Well, one part of clarification, when I say that if you are here illegally and you're committing violent crimes, okay, then yes, you should then still get a due process, but then you have to go back to the country because you've now come here not for a better way of life. You've come here to commit violent crimes. Now, you do have some illegal, undocumented, unlawful immigrants here who commit a crime. And it's it's simple, it's a simple crime, right? It's a misdemeanor. Those folks should still be given due process. But if you're here in this country and you are part of a gang and you're here illegally and you're committing violent crimes on innocent people, yes, that's where I draw the line. But the thing about the nail salon,
and that's how the Laken Riley Act was born, correct?
Yeah, I mean, and Democrats, we got to be able to say that because the Republicans are doing is that they're trying to make us out to be these people who just want everybody here illegally in. They're part of gangs and they're part of, and I'm going to say this, Lisa, a lot of folks in the Latino community who I talk to don't like being associated with those people because that's not why they're here. That's not what they represent. And then the last thing is, I agree with B-Rob. Let's be selfish of Americans, but let's also not forget who we are as Americans. When you literally now have a president, I go back to Trump, who literally has just turned this country into us versus them. If you're not with him, you're on the outside, and then all Democrats are just being labeled as just crazy, liberal, radical folks. But we got to put some metrics in place. I would like to know out of all the people that have been detained, and I'm getting to the nail salon, is how many of those people who have been detained are actually here illegally and committing crimes? Because remember, Lisa, we were sold a package deal that said, look, there's a gang problem in this country. We heard about all these gangs from Venezuela, all of these gangs from Mexico, all these people, they were committing these gang activities, these robberies, these rapes and all this. I want to know how many of these people that have been detained thus far are actually violent people, right? And then secondly, when you go into what just happened here at home, a nail salon was raided because they said they were investigating criminal activity in Cobb County. For our listeners, Cobb County is a blue county now, which used to be the strongest red county for a long time. And it's a place where a lot of immigrants gather. And these nail salons, Lisa, this is getting tricky because when you go into a nail salon, and I still do, shout out to Hammond Nails on Roswell Road. That's my place where I go have my focus group with my white, disaffected Republican suburban white women. Those of who would talk to me. Sometimes, a lot of folks don't want to talk in the nail salon, but many of these nail salons, Lisa, are family-owned businesses, right? These are my immigrants who will come here legally, some illegally. Let's just call it out for what it is. But we got to make sure we remind the American people one thing, since B-Rob is going very patriotic this morning, is the only reason that undocumented immigrants can get jobs in this country is because so many employers are eager to hire them, pay them under the table, some pay them legally, and often exploit their vulnerabilities. And yet, where's the process where we're going to actually hold these businesses accountable as well? And how are dozens of immigrants working at a nail salon a threat to national security, their violent crime? I would like to know what part of these workers' activities at that nail salon led this ICE raid. And the last thing I'll say is that why are the people so desperate to, go after just any and everybody? And I go back to what I said earlier. The White House is demanding that 3,000 immigrants be arrested by ICE every single day in this country. And it's led to even a conversation in Georgia we're having about expanding a ICE detention center in Southwest Georgia, because we've heard from many of the protesters that the conditions in these ICE detention centers are deplorable, right? Can't be shocked by that because even some of our jails in Georgia and counties have that. So I think this nail salon raid, I would like to know, is that a family-owned business or is owned by an employer, and has this employer, this business, been paying them in whatever type of way? But I still don't know how many of those people that were arrested, you said a dozen of them, were actually committing crimes or actually involved in illegal activity. That's where we got to take it a step further to figure out why these raids are happening.
It's so hard to discuss these issues because I am, as y'all know, very conservative when it comes to the immigration issue. I think we have done a grave disservice to the American people by allowing millions upon millions upon millions to come into this country illegally and without government oversight. We don't know who's here. We don't know what they're doing in many cases. As I said, many of them are hardworking folks who just want to provide for their families. Many are escaping violence in their home countries. These are human tragedies, no doubt about it. And I do hope that, again, Congress can step in and create a system for how we deal with this. It shouldn't be haphazard. It should be thoughtful. It should be something that is in the American self-interest. But yes, it does need to involve sending a lot of people back to their home country to have a reset. We need that. We've got just too many folks came in, particularly over the last 4 years of the Biden administration. But I think that's a little bit overstated because it's been broken for much, much longer than that. It was just when Biden got here that we just quit trying in any way whatsoever to stop it. It was come one, come all. And we're paying a price for it today. And I've always said, as we've discussed this, I am not hard-hearted about the human toll and tragedy involved in this. But this is what happens when you don't follow the rule of law. You end up with tragic choices at the end.
So it sounds like no real surprises for what you all were both watching on TV and seeing unfolding on the West Coast.
Well, it reminds me of a dark time in this country. Again, let's stay on our patriotic journey here. I mean, we all remember what happened in Compton and Watts, the protests, the riots, even when Dr. King was assassinated. in 1968. I mean, Rodney King being beaten by these police officers. Had it not been for video footage, all of them would have walked. I mean, again, we don't like to talk about it on the show, but, George Floyd being arrested and shot. I mean, there were so many unarmed black men who have been treated badly, and Hispanic Latino leaders have been treated badly in this country, particularly in the West Coast. And so, look, I mean, Brian made a good point. I mean, you literally, our listeners know this. You got the governor, Gavin Newsom, who is on television saying, "Come arrest me." I mean his words, not mine. You got the mayor of Los Angeles,
right? Doesn't get any more.
Yeah, well, I was trying, I was being a little bit more PG with it, but yeah, he's like, you got the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, who's a friend of mine. I had her at my house a couple times when she was back in Congress and raised money for her, who were literally, I think, was arrested or about to be arrested because they're pushing back on their process and how it's being done. And the National Guards, many of my friends sent me pictures last week of the National Guard, the tanker trucks, ammunition being flown in. I mean, this is about to get really, really bad. So no, Lisa, I am terrified. And I warn our listeners here in Georgia, we are one decision away from a politician, that leader in the state, that will decide to do something and cooperate with these ICE raids. And we're one peaceful protest that becomes violent to be just like what's happening in California. I'm telling you, it is outrage about what's happening. And then look, as someone who was here legally, a natural born citizen, I feel the pain of the folks who are coming here for a better way of life. And many of those folks I work with and I know them personally. But if you're here and you're part of this violent network of people and committing these crimes, I'm okay with you showing me the evidence and sending those people back. But what is happening, Lisa, we can't tell who's legal, who's illegal. And when a Democrat talks about the process, we automatically get labeled as being liberal and out of touch on American. And I just refuse for Republicans to do that to me because I'm just as American as any of them, right? But this is a political issue, and I think California just shows us, man, what this administration is doing, and you got a very liberal state like California that's pushing back.
Yeah, I don't have anything to ask.
So much going on.
What I have to
the
say about
land
it.
of the free and the brave. So much going on, and as Brian indicated, this is going to be a conversation, a talking point for many months to come. So we're going to wrap it up here for this edition of Political Breakfast.
See you guys.
Thank you, Lisa.